Good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in this world. Sorry for this delay. My computer decided to have a heart attack or something because it has not been doing what I wanted to do. But that's technology for you. Welcome to the inspiring conversation. And now we are starting year 2. So this will be fun, and we are just a little reminder about why we are doing this. So it's all about creating conversations that really matter. We're diving into ways to connect deeply, break down barriers, and build moments that inspire trust and growth. Whether it is with your team at work or in your everyday chats, we will bring more positivity, realness, and impact to every conversation. So my guest today is an author, a professor, I think, teacher, and he has written, amongst others, this book called Leadership as Masterpiece Creation: What Business Leaders Can Learn from the Humanities About Moral Risk Taking. So let's welcome my fellow guest and great person from, what is it, Charles? New York.
New York City.
New York.
Hello.
Yes.
New York. Yes. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your patience because, I just came out of the shower and I'm still I think I have to go back in because I'm just sweating, because when the computer does what the computer does, then it starts horrifically.
But we're having rebellions, computer rebellions.
Yes.
I suffered all day yesterday. I was going to begin by apologizing to you if for some reason my screen just suddenly goes dark at some point. I think I have gotten the IT specialists to stop that from happening, but I'm still a little jittery myself. So I hope all the viewers are happy, but I totally understand where you're coming from and sympathize enormously.
It is just like they say, when it rains, it pours. So, and you probably could see my frustrations. But luckily for me, I have my Canadian moose over there, and then I have my teddy bear, so I can go and hug them if everything goes really bad. But welcome, Charles, and our topic today is the courage to risk, why moral bravery is the missing link in modern leadership. But of course, before we dive into that, we have to know who is Charles Spinosa. And I will risk a limb here. I think that you have some Italian blood in you, or is it Greek?
It's Italian. You got me right the first time. 50% Italian, in fact, Sicilian.
Oh, I have been in Sicily. It's the best island ever. And it's so beautiful. So beautiful. So which side are you from? Are you from the east or from the west?
My grandfather is from Palermo, the north. And my grandmother is from a little town in the south called Santa Croce.
So he moved from Palermo, and Palermo is famous for its not so positive things as.
Yes, I have to confess, my grandparents did not. They were very happy to leave Sicily. They left around the turn of the 20th century. Both of them, they actually met in New York City. My grandfather was a carpenter, became a contractor. My grandmother was a seamstress. She worked sort of in a sweatshop for many years, married my grandfather. They moved to New Jersey. When I asked them, should I go back and visit Sicily? They both looked at me and said, why would you do that? And so their memories of Sicily were not the best. They loved the U.S. and they wanted me speaking English, so they didn't teach me Italian. And I have to confess, I love Italy myself. Every time I've gone, it has been amazing. We were just in Sicily 2 years ago, and I visited the Greek temples there, and I loved it. And for me, the only downside, Sicilian food is getting very fancy these days. And I was brought up on my mother's cooking. I was hoping to find some of that in Sicily. My grandmother's cooking, I didn't find any. But yes, we're going on.
I love the food in Sicily. So that, like, oh my God, it was just like excellent. And it's just, I was impressed. It is just so magical to go to a place where everything is like you would expect. You know, the stories about the Romans and like the build. It's just like unbelievable. So, but that was definitely not what we were going to talk about. So we could talk about that forever. But tell us a little bit more. Like that was your grandparents, so they had your father or mother, and like tell us a little bit about Charles.
Okay, so that's the story of my grandparents. My mother sort of is. Her family came over very early. She's a daughter of the American Revolution, is Scottish, Dutch, past there. But about me, I should say I wrote this book on leadership, but that's because I've been for the last 28 years or so a management consultant. However, you were right. I'm sort of a recovering professor. I started out in the humanities. I was initially a Shakespeare scholar. I got my PhD in Shakespeare from UC Berkeley and taught at Miami University in Ohio for a number of years. But at that time, I found myself writing in philosophy and cultivating the acquaintance of philosophers. And I did more publishing in philosophy than on Shakespeare, and ended up, my final appointment was a visiting professor at Berkeley in the philosophy department, where I taught Heidegger, Foucault, and Nietzsche, and did so with one of my former co-authors, Bert Dreyfus, who was a famous Heidegger scholar. And so after my first book, which was on innovation from a philosopher's point of view, innovation in business, innovation in politics, innovation in culture, I was invited to join a consulting company and basically teach CEOs what I was teaching my undergraduates, which was how to have a life with a defining passion, how to stand for your defining passion, how to strategize out of your defining passion, and how to bring other people into it, which is the core of leadership that I have been talking about for years. More recently, in the last 10 years, I realized that leaders, to manifest, realize their defining passions, have to take moral risks. They have to risk firing people, spending money in ways where the risk goes sour. They're not going to be simply seen as foolish. They're going to be seen in one way or another as bad people, as evil, because they are taking risks to change the norms of their industry or their company. That's what I want to say is the very interesting, cool boldness of a leader. That's the kind of leader who gets a company that stands apart from other companies and stands apart as having a different moral order from other companies. You can think, for instance, Amazon, where relentlessness is the top value, and compare that to, say, Google, where pursuing your dreams is a top value. Those are two quite different organizations, two different good lives. You couldn't have the kind of good life you have at Google, at Amazon, and you couldn't, by the same token, be a relentless person who's constantly pushing boundaries and be very happy at Google with its psychological safety and so forth. So I admire those companies where leaders create moral orders in the company, they spill over to the communities, but to get there, they have to take risks. And if they fail at those risks, they will be seen not just as foolish, but as bad people in one way or another. And so that was the lesson that I learned, I'd say, about 10 years ago with my clients. It's very important. I think it's a lesson that people sensitive to the humanities and who see organizations in terms of their moral core, not in terms of operational efficiency, which is what everybody's taught to see in organizations. If they see them as sort of moral institutions, then you get the rest. And I think that's where my humanities background has served me very well. Is that enough of an introduction? Should I say I've worked in organizations both from startups to Fortune 100 companies in the United States, Canada, Latin America, and the UK and the rest of Europe. I did a little bit of work in China, but not much.
So, but how is it that because I think we have to start with a book, because this is just amazing how the book is like leadership as a masterpiece creation. It's what business leaders can learn from the humanities about moral risk taking. When you think about how humanity has been built, and because we were talking about the Romans, how they had visions in their head about roads, constructions, and whatnot, like how it happened. But how is it that we can incorporate it into the business? Because sometimes people think like, oh, the Excel sheets, they just control everything. And if the numbers don't do this, then we fire. Like the humanity in business sometimes is not there. But like you take risks, but how can you do it without all the negative stuff? Like when you're saying like, okay, I have to fire persons or la. Why can't you just be? Why can't you foresee the future? Like, well, how is it that are we good enough to learn from the past to go forward in the future? Because this book, like the title is just like, whoa.
Yeah. Okay. So those are big questions, and you hooked me. It's fair to say I love the Romans, and I love what the Romans did, and I think we still depend on it today. And I think that part of the ambition to make your business into a masterpiece, and let me say a little bit more about that in a moment, comes from having an appreciation of history. And if you don't have an appreciation of history, what are you likely to do? Well, you're likely to follow business schools and consultants like me and think that operational excellence is what your business should be about. You follow the spreadsheet, you follow the recipes that consultants and business school professors give you. And if you do it well and persistently, you create a profitable enterprise. And in my experience, about 20% of the CEOs I work with love that, absolutely love that. And it's hard to do, by the don't let me dismiss it. It is not easy to create a profitable enterprise in a competitive world. If you do that, you have succeeded, and you do deserve credit for that. But most of the CEOs, I'd say 80% of the CEOs I work with, when I ask them the question, what always goes wrong in your industry or what always goes wrong in your organization, they have an answer. And that for me is the key. And the thing that goes wrong, it's an anomaly, it's odd, they work around it all the time, but it's something that goes morally wrong. Let me give you a few examples from just my recent engagements. So what always goes wrong? We take advantage of loyal customers to offer good deals to new customers, to grow new customers. What always goes wrong? We play it safe in my industry. We are an industry with lots of danger, but we don't innovate when we could innovate, and our innovations would be good for the environment and good for our customers. What always goes wrong? Well, the cosmetic industry, we sell our cosmetics and we sell our skincare products by making women feel anxious, deeply anxious, and then they buy things that are miracles. By the way, This is happening in Men's Health as well now too.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
make
yeah.
men's devices and do the same thing. So what might have been gender specific in the 50s is no longer gender specific. Video games, what always goes wrong? Well, we set out to make a video game that will appeal to both genders and even appeal to wide age ranges. And we have insights and we know how to do that. And then we run into difficulties. And when we run into difficulties, it's so much easier to create a video game that will appeal to the nasty side of teenage boys. We end up going there. That's what always goes wrong in the industry. And healthcare is another one. We're committed to helping patients deal with their insurance companies. In the United States, you don't have this problem in other parts of the world. And so we'll write 1 or 2 letters to the insurance company to try to get the insurance company to pay for the treatment. But after that, we just don't have time. These are examples of things. And you can hear these are wrongs that are moral wrongs. We ought to be taking care of patients. We ought to really push harder to create that video game that's going to appeal to people of both genders. We shouldn't just sell by creating anxiety. We need to innovate in our industry. We can't just play it safe. And we should treat our loyal customers better. Those are all shoulds. Those are all moral shoulds. So, and my book is about enabling those people. I call them anomalies in the book, moral anomalies, because it's not clear what's right. The normal thing to do is just to sell that way, and the business accepts that, and people generally accept it. But if you think that's wrong, then you have a sense that it's wrong that other people don't have. And overcoming that wrong, I believe, will create for your customers and you a sense of wonder in your business. Now, you asked me to connect this to the Romans, and so I want to. I'm desperate to do that. Our simple sense of transactions, of buying and selling things, is something really that the Romans gave us. And it was an amazing thing that the Romans gave us. Before that, in ancient civilizations, of course, you could sell simple things like fish and grain and some pottery goods, the way we sell now. But when it came to selling your family estate, when it came to selling the work animal that you had trained, when it came to selling, let's face it, this is the ancient world, the slave that was your household slave, when it came to selling anything that was really intimate, you couldn't do that in the ancient world. It was just considered wrong. It was either illegal or so frowned upon that you wouldn't do it. And the Romans developed something they called a mancipio. I'm mispronouncing the Latin for the Latinists in your audience, but it was like an emancipation. And so you could gather your neighbors around and do a sale of your estate. Do the sale. You could even in Rome sell your children, this household slave, the animal that you had trained to work with you. All of these things that were really, really intimately involved in your life, you could sell. And that produced a kind of wonder about sales and sales transactions that we lose today, but that I think those people, those leaders in our world today who understand that selling is something that's wonderful, buying and selling is something that's wonderful, try to retain. And who do you think of offhand who does that? Well, the luxury goods, but for me, the most obvious person who did that was Steve Jobs. Think about whenever you buy almost any Apple product. I'll say there's no Apple product I've ever bought that didn't come inside a box, inside a carton, where opening it made you feel like you were unpacking a jewel. And that's what Steve Jobs did. And that's because Steve Jobs, of course, was, I'm going to bring the humanities and technology together. That's what during the later part of his life, that's what he saw as his ambition. And he was actually bringing that Roman sense of wonder to our simple everyday transactions. That is what I look for business leaders to do when they right those wrongs that they know are going on in their company or in their industry. And so that's what makes somebody who simply, you can think of somebody who simply rights wrongs as somebody that is doing the right thing and is doing it in a dutiful way. I don't think that most people who do the right thing do it in a dutiful way. No doubt there are some, and your audience can think of some who have done it. But the ones that I am thinking of are the ones who do it in a wonderful way and try to bring out the wonder of doing this thing in the right way. And that's something that is bequeathed to us, the wonder of a simple transaction by the ancient Romans. So I tip my hat to the Romans. Roman law, I think, is one of the most amazing achievements of humans. We look at the archways, we look at the roads, we look at the aqueducts, and those are cool. Don't get me wrong, and I'm one of the first people to go and visit them and look at them. But I think Roman law outdoes them, as does the English common law. And those are the two laws we live by today. And if we think of the wonder of contract, the wonder of property, and how we hold property and can keep it for our lives, or how property stays inside our families forever, it wasn't always that way. All of those things are wonderful inventions that bring wonder into our lives.
Because you mentioned the English Commonwealth, I want to give a shout out to Aishwarya. She is an avid listener and watcher. So she, I had the question, but I didn't want to disturb you. But she asks about the history. History does guide us many insights for better business transactions. So do the same things manifest in modern business organizations? And and the follow-up was, any observation, sir? So what do you say about, because when you say, it's so funny how you mentioned the Romans, you mentioned the English Commonwealth, and how business was done and how it was back in Europe and stuff. And then we have America. How did America become this different, or was there a difference? Was it a thing that they, the leaders back then, they just said, we don't want to be like the English Commonwealth because we don't want that kind of, we don't want the king, we don't want this, we don't want that, we don't want the French, blah, blah, blah. So what is it that happened? Because USA, differentiates so much from the rest of the world. Well, not to talk about Asia or China or whatnot, but it's just, what are your thoughts about that?
What makes the U.S. different from the European countries from which most of the people in the U.S. came from?
Yes, because if we think about USA is only what, 450, 500 years old.
Yes, and the U.S. as an entity is only around 250 years old. I can't do my arithmetic all that quickly, but somebody who can subtract 1789 from 2025 can give you the exact number. And yes, you're right. Well, the U.S. I come from the U.S., so I'm going to speak. I like the U.S. and I love Europe. I love both. So let me say, first of all, the U.S. took a lot from Europe. We rejected the king. We rejected aristocracy. We accepted the common law. That's in our Constitution. We have juries. We have judges that come right out of the common law. We have legislatures that come pretty much outside of Europe. Our presidency is an amalgam of different things from Europe. So our politics, without the aristocracy, without the monarchy, are deep European. And our legal stuff is European. What we had was a frontier. And that is something that I cherish, and I think the people in the United States cherished at least through the 1960s, 1970s. What did that mean? That meant if you didn't fit in with the community that you were in, and it happened frequently, religiously, socially, what'd you do? You picked up and you went west. and you try to create something of your own out west. That is, I would say, the big differentiator. Now, there are political theorists who say one of the other big things about the United States might be true, might not be true. I just want to give them credit, is that we were not a unified people. We were English, we were French, we were German, we were Dutch. We didn't have a national basis. And the thing that made us who we were was ultimately our Constitution. I think there's some truth in that. But I think what made us who we were was, number one, a frontier, and number two, the self-reliance that you had to have on the frontier. That is, when you live on the frontier, you're your own doctor, you're your own farmer, you're your own hunter, you're your own carpenter, you're your own a lot of things. You know, different people moved to the frontier and there were settlements, but you had to make do a lot on your own. And that self-reliance, I think that is, when we capture it, when we do business right in the United States, that becomes a big part of the business. And that's something that we have basically sent back to Europe, because I think that many times the entrepreneurs of Europe, they're taking over some American self-reliance. And what does that mean? We can think of self-reliance in a bitter way as something that's very hard. I can't reach out to the doctor. I can't have my food delivered. I've got to grow it, and so forth. We can think of it as hard and bitter, or you can think of it as something that's wonderful. And I think that thinking of it as something that produces wonder and gives wonder. Wow, I created this. Maybe somebody else could admire it. That is, I think, what we're trying to bestow on other people. And I think a lot of people in Europe, at least the entrepreneurs in Europe or the leaders in Europe who are trying to create their own masterpieces, that's something that we give back to them. And it wasn't completely absent, because after all, Europeans went to the New World and brought back things from the New World and create beautiful palaces, created a new understanding of man. So it's not a deep divide. It's a small divide. We gave people a territory to explore that side of themselves. And I think that is that sense of self-reliance, something when you open something that you get from Apple and you say, wow, and it's a jewel, it's something that you're going to bring into your life and make your own in a way. And you sense that you're making it your own in a way. And that goes back to the Roman emancipation. When somebody sells you a horse that he or she has trained his whole life, you have to make it your own. You can't leave it as just theirs. And so I see connections, and I see the United States as a place where what was, I would say, wonderful in Europe got to show itself off and got to send itself back. I don't know if that answers. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce.
I swear yes. Yeah, I have been learning this from November. So that's like, I think she will forgive us. So, but listening to you, Charles, is and thinking about your book and looking back on the history, because when you speak of the Romans and how it was like you have grain, I have fish, let's make a deal, and then you have the Shakespearean time, or the like all of these whatnot and business, what happens and stuff. Nowadays, when we think about business, it's all about the profit. And to make a profit, that is hard. But as we were mentioning, like there is something that is harder, and that is maybe taking a risk or like doing stuff that is moral right. But when you think about the business of business is business, and you have to make the shareholders happy, you have to do this and that, and then you have the stock exchange, and you can do like the stock exchange has played a significant role in modern history when in 1929, when the collapse of the finance markets. Like, so how is it if the beauty from the Romans has been, as you describe it so beautifully. Like, how is it to describe business today when we have all of these things over us, and especially nowadays where things are moving drastically and we are maybe not as in harmony in what because of these things. So what do you say about that?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that I never believed that the business of business is business. I just don't
Me
see
neither.
it. And I want to say why I don't see it. But I want to say what I do see first. And this is why I think the humanities and business are actually very, very close. I think the business of business is enabling good lives. I don't think businesses just sell goods, although some do, but I don't think at their heart, most businesses sell goods. What they sell is the means to a good life. What they're actually trying to sell is a good life to their customers, is a good life to their employees, is a good life to their owners. And I think that when they're really alert and in tune with things, they also want to sell a good life to their suppliers. That's less so. And particularly in the construction industry and other industries like that, you can argue very strongly that they don't try to sell good lives to their suppliers. But let's take customers, owners, and employees. You don't get employees going the extra mile, which is what you need in business to make profits today, unless they're doing it for a good life. You don't get customers standing on platforms, mostly online platforms, and promoting your goods unless they've given the customers a good life. And that's something you need today, as today has changed. And you don't have owners investing more and more money in to a company just because they see the profits going up. They want to believe that the goods are helping them and their other customers lead a good life. And that's how you get really good returns. And so I think from the economic perspective, the simple things that you need to do to succeed in business, to have the profits you want to have, imply producing a good life. But let's leave that aside for the minute, because you can say, well, that might be true of the Steve Jobs, the industry changing companies at the top. I want to look at 50% of the businesses. Let's look at the small businesses that line your streets. I've never been to your country. I assume that the small businesses that line your streets are something like the small businesses that line my streets. My streets are in Manhattan. Madison Avenue is just to one side of my apartment. When I walk up and down Madison Avenue, there are tons of small businesses there. And you look inside those small businesses, restaurants, dress shops, hardware stores even, and they're all distinctive. In my neighborhood, I tell the story in the book, there are two hardware stores, very close walking distance from each other. One hardware store you walk into, you hear classic jazz music. You smell some soaps. You get 10 feet inside the store, no further, and you have somebody say, "What are you looking for? How can I help you?" That implies a way that we treat customers. That implies a way that we treat employees. That implies a way at which we look at the environment in which people want to be in. The other hardware store, you walk in, there's sawdust on the floor. There's the faint smell of 3-in-1 oil, which is the oil that you use for small equipment.
Yeah.
You'll see somebody putting stuff on a shelf down the hall, and you'll see somebody else by the cash register. Nobody's asking you if you need any help. You can go and ask for help if you want. But they're busy. That shows a very different way. In one place, you're delighting customers. In the other case, you're assuming customers know what they want and can come and get it, and you're just making it efficient. In one case, people are trying to take hardware and create something that they think of as really beautiful. In another case, they're trying to build a good, solid structure. And it's very different view of what a hardware store is and what it does. And if you ask the owner, I am sure the owner is not going to say, well, I saw this other hardware store and I needed to create something different, and so I got a consultant to help me create something different. The owner is doing that because the owner believes this is the right way to treat these customers. This is the right way to treat employees. I want employees out chatting with customers. I want employees stocking shelves. This is the right way to treat owners. And that's 50% of our business. Everybody says we live in these huge capitalist economies. Well, most of our business, in fact, is these small businesses. They rely on the capitalist companies, the big capital companies, to supply the goods that they have on their shelves. But they're doing that. And so I want to say that's what business is. That's taking care of your customers, taking care of your employees in the way that you think is right and distinctive. And when you look at the shops, when you look at the restaurants, they're different in ways that are easy to see and admire. And that's what I like. And what do they want? They want you to admire them. And so that, for me, is the heart of business. Business is about helping people create good lives. And different people create different good lives because they are all appealing to different segments in different ways. What happens? Well, what happens when people go to business school and they decide that they are supplying masses of customers, not customers that they could get to know, then the economies and the processes for producing mass goods cheaply take over. And when those things take over, then your Excel spreadsheet has more and more importance. And I see businesses diverging. We have agile business, which is one type of business we have today, where people are constantly looking at responses of customers to their products and constantly making adjustments and doing it to make more and more profit and make it more and more quickly. And my son worked for a while for one of those companies, and they were constantly changing the algorithms on Meta and Facebook to get more sales. And at the end, they were playing with algorithms. They didn't really know what their customers really cared about anymore. They would try one thing, then another thing, and then another thing, whichever one worked best, good, then refine it the next day and refine it the next day. You don't know what the truth of your customers is, and you don't really anymore know what the truth of your business is. You are just responding very, very quickly to changes in the marketplace and doing it successfully. But I think that doesn't offer a good life even to the owners of the business, because there's nothing that you're holding true anymore except the capacity to respond quickly to whatever changes are happening in the marketplace. And that is one direction business is moving in. And a former co-author of mine, Don Sull, writes about it brilliantly. His book on turbulence is a brilliant study of those kinds of businesses. And I'm saying there is the opportunity for business to move in the way that Steve Jobs was trying to take it, where people are creating masterpieces, where they have a sense of the truth of their customers, they have a sense of the truth of their employees, and they're bringing that out and making it come alive for lots of people. I know that you're getting lots of comments I can see on the side of the screen. I can't read them quickly.
No, yeah. Aish, she has permitted me to call her Aish, so instead of Aishwarya, Aish. So she says, interesting side, business from human-centric as connecting and serving. And she says also, that's where customer preference is key. And that is also what I think. Growing up here in Iceland, you had the Kaufman or the groceries on this corner, and then you had the fishing shop, and then you had this shop and milk, blah blah blah. But then, as things evolved, it was better to have it in one place. then you lost something. You lost the like the heart of maybe the community. So so how is it? Do you sense that we, do the customers or people, do we want to go back to those days? Are we enough people who remember those days? Like if you, because you mentioned, and I have heard that the Manhattan is just like people are just going there and there are so many things to do and you have to go there like many times. Once is not enough because you can experience a whole lot and you will always find something new and stuff. So what is your take on that? Like, do we want to go, do we want, as consumers or like just people, do we want to take one step back and say there is something, this is this pace, we are just, how is it, like where are we going?
My answer is an unqualified yes. I don't consider it a step back. Uh,
Okay.
I think it's going to depend on certain economic conditions. Why is it that the Walmarts of the world succeed? Why is it that the franchises succeed? It's not because people say, "Wow, that is a really cool vision of how people can live their lives," and I want to be. I mean, Walmart tries. Walmart has greeters. Walmart has all sorts of things to attract you to it.
Yeah,
And it's a
yeah,
very
yeah.
clever store. And I don't want to. Sam Walton was brilliant, but I too, when I lived in Berkeley, Berkeley is like the way you described the old Iceland. You have your seafood store, you have your meat store, you have your produce store, you have the bread store. They all have different visions. They all really work to get you the best products, and you walk from one to the other, and you buy your various groceries. It also has the big box store there too, where you can buy things more cheaply. And if you need to buy things more cheaply, well, then you do. So I'm feeling rich this week. We're going to the cool shops. I don't feel so rich this week. I just spent money on this, that, or the other thing. I'm going to the big box store and getting things a little cheaper. That I understand. Now, why would I be daft enough to think that the mass producers can't just beat out the shops, or the shops just can appeal to a small group of rich people here and there? This is where I think AI can help us out enormously. AI not in the hands of Amazon, Google, Meta, and so forth, but AI in the hands of the small shopkeepers. They are going to be able, I believe, to get their distinctive visions, creating the store. They're going to be able to purchase what they want, and they're going to do it at prices we can afford. That is my hope for AI. AI, if you see the world as a huge factory, then AI just takes away everybody's job and makes everything cheap. If you
Yeah.
see the world as a lot of little merchants struggling to create attractive visions for us, then AI enables them to compete with those big mass producers and compete well with those big mass producers. And obviously, we get more jobs out of that, more small businesses arising out of that. And I think ultimately, we as customers and as citizens of states will be making that choice, which way we go. My bet is if I can help people create more masterpieces now, this is a plug for read my book and create a masterpiece if you're a leader,
Yeah. Yeah.
then we're going to make the right choice with AI, and we're going to have the world that you like, and it's going to be even more creative than the small businesses that you grew up with in Iceland, because instead of, as small businesses do, counting your pennies and having to spend them very, very wisely, they're going to have a robot counting their pennies and help them spend wisely so they can put their energy into something more creative.
But how is it that we can, because teaching, like you, there are no school for leaders. How can you influence people who are studying business or whatever they are studying or whatever they want to become, and they will become a business owner, let's say? How can we ignite this fire of the moral risk taking? Because why do as everybody else does? Like, how tired is that? Oh, he is having success of selling ice cream. I will sell ice cream. And then what is the, like, what do you do? Or pizzas, because we both love pizzas, I think, because we are semi-Italians. So how can we teach this? How can we teach this, that the conformity of, like, we want to be like Shakespeare, we want to be like Machiavelli or the Romans, or like, we had this. But now everything's, for me, like, I don't know what your take on it. We are all going to conformity. Like, think if there were hundreds of thousands of me out there, or hundreds of thousands of you out there, like, how boring would the world be? Does it make sense what I'm asking you?
You're certainly, there is that trend. I mean, as businesses move to more and more agility, they're all going to end up following similar algorithms, or algorithms that are so, where the differences between them are tiny, and people are going to be racing to make changes. And for me, that is, for most people, I think it's a burnout life. You're not going to care that much about what you do. You're just going to be racing to be successful. I think that's one of the lessons that people will learn, that it's not interesting to make money that way, that it's challenging, and it's like trying to sprint in a marathon. It is very, very hard. There is enough beauty in the world, I think, to draw people away from that. And I think they want their lives to be good and beautiful, and they want to surround themselves with things that are good and beautiful. That is ultimately, I think, if I'm sort of serious, if I can work with clients and be on shows like this show and inspire people to say, I'm going to go create a masterpiece. How do I do it? What are the steps to do it? People will do it. I don't think most people are so heartbroken that they don't want to do that. It's just that nobody is showing them the way. There are very few people showing them the way. And I'm hoping that as word gets out, please speak about my book, as word gets out, they will, because they want to. When I run, as I say, the business leaders that I run into, 80% of them want to create a masterpiece. Nobody encourages them to do it. Everybody encourages them to be more efficient, be more productive, be a little bit more innovative here and there, but not in a way that goes against the industry. But they do want to test themselves, and they're doing it behind their backs. They're doing it in their face. The simplest way, when I talk to people, when you talk to a manager in a business, managers in business, a large part of their job, when it's not the mathematics and following the algorithms, is actually working with their employees to stretch their employees, to get their employees to do more, to be more imaginative, to help each other out more, to work harder, let's face it. All of those things. Now, you're a manager. I just mentioned 3 things that you're trying to get your employees to do, to stretch them to do. Be more imaginative, work harder, help each other out. Now, virtually every manager has to choose, how much weight do I put on each one of those? That is kind of masterpiece thinking. I'm making a moral judgment there. It's based on, I see this employee, she could be more imaginative. What we need here is more imaginative people, more imaginative stuff. I just need people working harder. That is the shape of the business in small. And that's where managers learn to start doing masterpiece thinking, to say, I'm making moral judgments here. What's cool about this business is not when I add up all the widgets I sold and figure out that I have to raise or lower prices. What's cool about this business and what I'm doing here is I got her to imagine a new way of doing things. I got him to work 60 hours and love it. I got this other person to help those two out so that they're doing much more. That's what's cool as a manager. All right, that's what's cool. Again, let me use my 80-20 rule. That's what's cool for 80% of the managers. There are 20% that are going to find the other stuff cool. But right there, they're doing masterpiece thinking. Now, they're told, you don't talk about that. You don't tell people that that's what you're proud of. That's sort of the thing that we keep hidden. And we act like we're just following the spreadsheet. But in fact, they're not. And my book tries to bring out that side of things. My book is about how do you build trust? How do you show your virtues? How do you create the right mood in your business? How do you listen for differences? Really listen for differences, not just listen empathetically to see how you would feel if you were in the other person's shoes. All of those traits are the traits of management that enable you to stretch your employees and stretch yourself. And when you're engaged in that work of stretching, you're engaged in the kind of moral work where suddenly one day you're going to get up and say, you know, I've created this team. They're a great team. We don't have to make video games that just appeal to the nasty side of young men. We can create a video game that appeals across gender. We don't have to sell to male anxiety or female anxiety. We can sell to a good life. I've created a team that can do that. And so on. Those are the kinds, that's how you get there. It's working on small. Now, obviously, one of the things that I am told frequently from people who like my book, and it's sort of heartbreaking. They don't say, Charles, I love your book because I never thought of myself as facing a moral anomaly before and overcoming a moral anomaly and taking a risk to do it. I haven't had anybody, it's heartbreaking. Charles, your description of what it is to take a moral risk, to define it, and then go and do it, and to sort of build up the courage in yourself to do it, that's what I love about your book. I haven't had that. What people say to me instead is, Charles, your book gives me permission to get out of the spreadsheet following and follow my heart. Your advice is good, but it gives me permission. That's the breakthrough in your book. I'll take it.
Of course.
I'll take it. That if giving people that permission enables them to do it, that you can put that on my tombstone. I'd love the other stuff, but you can put that on my
But of course,
tombstone.
people have to be brave to step out of get out of the box, do something. Like, why is it that you have to be? We don't all have to wear shirts or skirts or jeans that are from the same market, blah, blah, blah. Like, we can be different. We have to be different. But she is also asking, like, tapping into new markets, offer opinions that would be preferred by target customer from different demographics. And she says also, like, how masterpiece would be, sir, for expansion stage, like tapping into new markets as idea, because I know that time flies when you're having fun. So you have to, like, maybe keep it brief. I don't know if you understand what she is mentioning. Like,
Yeah, I can look. I think once you see yourself as creating good lives for people, you don't just stick with your single target segment. Why is that? Because the kind of listening you do to people applies outside your target segment. One of the things I love doing is developing new customer propositions by hearing the difference in people. And I'll tell you one story really quickly. I was doing some work for a bank that had joined with an automobile association, and they wanted to sell mortgages to those people. And I went and spoke to those people, and they seemed like pretty typical customers. But we all thought that they would want to take care of emergencies. So we were offering a mortgage that said, if you need to miss a month, you just call us up and you can miss a month on payment. They hated that. Oh, wow. They absolutely hated that. They said, Charles, debt is like a stone around my neck. I hate debt. My house isn't really my own so long as I have a mortgage. And suddenly I realized these people are not financial optimizers like the rest of us. They don't see a loan as a simple tool for maximizing their money. They're actually buying homes that are part of their identity. And so we need to sell them a mortgage where, when they act responsibly, we reduce the principal amount so they can get out of the mortgage sooner. And so that was what we invented. Now that kind of listening to see these people as different from our normal customers, that's the kind of listening that you have to have with your normal customers just to begin with, to say, how am I going to create a good life for the customers I understand now? Once you get good at that, how can I create a good life for the customers I don't understand so well? That becomes part of the fun of business. And when you create that new product, that's wonderful. That creates more wonder, more admiration all the way around. Now we're not only taking care of these customers, but we're actually doing something wonderful for those customers. And then we move on to the next and the next. That is the quickest way I can describe how the listening to create a good life for a customer expands to other customer segments.
Well, Charles, you have gone, like, this is just awesome, because this means that we are on a journey, and I love it that you wanted to be on this show, on this podcast, because, well, you inspired me that I am doing something, because I believe in this. I believe that we have to take care of each other and be creative and help each other and elevate each other, because pay it forward.
And that's what your platform is. Your platform isn't just one where you're going to bring out the next sort of algorithmically suggested guest after another, after another, after another. You want conversations that really matter. And I know from the interview you had with me, that's what you check into, because you want to create good lives. And this is not just a good for somebody. You want your guests to inspire people to make their lives better. And that's what you're doing. And that's what many podcasters are doing. You're doing it particularly well. So I'm inspired, and I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity.
Just to remind people, just go out and buy this book. I need to listen to it, because I find it best to listen to the English books, especially if they are thick. I've gathered that you have loads of information.
It is. The book is a dense book. There's a lot. I put a lot in every page of the book. For me, every page is a masterpiece. The audiobook just came out a couple of weeks ago, the end of July. It's out there on Amazon, Spotify, and iTunes.
Well, then I have to, that is going on my list. But and I just now we have a brief thing that you can be found on social media, but only LinkedIn, isn't it? You are only there.
LinkedIn is the easiest place to find me. And if you go to LinkedIn, you can get my email address and write me directly.
Yeah. So I will. Yeah. So she thanks us. I think quick and precisely answered, sir. She is very polite. I thank you for that, Ice. Thank Hedin, sir, and Charles, sir. Best wishes. I come from publishing industry and writer too, expecting book 2. So thanks. So, and thank you, Ice, for being an avid listener to us. And just again, Charles, you are the best, because I was looking forward to this chat, because I knew that it would be fun to talk about how we take something old and put it to the new. We have to think, we have to use the past.
Yes, the past inspires us. If nothing else, the past inspires us. The past fills us with wonder, and I think that's what we want to create for future generations, as well as ourselves, our neighbors, and our friends.
Yes.
So
thank you very much. But next inspiring conversation will be next week on Thursday, 28th of August, where I will talk to a guy called Kenneth Kunken, and his life story is unbelievable, from getting paralyzed from the neck down when he was 20 to becoming a district attorney. Like, it's unbelievable. I have listened to his book, and it gave me confidence that if he could do it, anyone can do it. And it's amazing. So that is I think we will have a good story. But as always, people, be curious, be interested, and be inspired. Find Charles on the media, your preferred media,
LinkedIn.
and in LinkedIn, and just, be happy. And I don't know if Aish has something more to say. Oh, no, I have this Icelandic boy. Thank you. This was interesting session. This is one of my teenagers from back in the days when I was working in the youth club. Thank you, Valdimar. So, but Charles, 1,000 thanks. And just, it's funny to hear the sounds from New York behind you. Like,
yes, I'm sorry.
No, this is like, we are live. This is authentic. Yes. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful being here. I hope your audience found it interesting, and they will go out and create masterpieces and create others to do so. And please buy my book if you need any help doing that.